You're watching JCT TV. This is Bible study for the 21st century. Now, friends, I've really enjoyed our programming this month, and not only because I love being with you, but also because I've introduced my son Jess to you, Jess Cantelon, who is a pastor, but also is producing these remarkable videos from Israel called IsraelVideoProject.com. You can log on to it, see it for yourself. We're showing you some samples over the course of these programs, and in just a few minutes, Jess will be back with me, and we'll show you another segment of the Israel Video Project, so stay tuned. The last few programs, my son Jess Cantelon has been highlighting his IsraelVideoProject.com, which you can see on your own at whatever time you choose. In fact, why not watch one right now?
This is Israel. Welcome to Israel. My name is Jess Cantelon, and this is where I grew up. I want to invite you to join me as I travel across this beautiful country, following Jesus' footsteps as he resolutely set his face towards Jerusalem. Here we are in Jerusalem. This is the place where Jesus died and the place where he rose again. It's a special place, there's no question. Now, as we've been following him down this road, as his eyes were fixed on the cross, there's no way around talking about sin and death. I confess that I'm a bit tender as I record this episode, as a wonderful family friend of mine just passed away recently in Israel. Now, if you've ever been to an Israeli funeral, you know that it's refreshingly stark. The burial happens very quickly, usually within 24 hours of death. The ceremony is not beautiful. It's an abrupt confrontation with the finality of death. Death is terrible. We're all going to die. We're all going to lose someone dear to us. It's the great unknown. It separates us from those we love, and no matter how you look at it, it just seems all wrong. The thing is, death was never the plan, and neither was sin. And that's why Jesus was determined to get here and to the cross. He loved us. Because he loved us, he had to put a stop to death. And in order to do that, he had to first deal with our sin. It's never a comfortable thing to talk about sin, but it's the issue, isn't it? Not the fact that we do bad things that feel as dissonant as death does, but the fact that we willingly choose to go our own way, that we know better than God. Here I am on the Mount of Olives, surrounded by the graves and the bones of those who have gone before us. It was at the top of this same mountain that after visiting Zacchaeus, Jesus wept over Jerusalem, wishing that they had received his salvation and his peace.
אבל אלוהים המלא רחמים אהב אותנו, ובאהבתו הרבה, אף כי מתים היינו בפשענו, החיינו עם המשיח.
In the book of Ezekiel, God brings the prophet to a valley very much like this one, full of dry bones. And he asks him if he thinks that these bones can live. And Ezekiel responds in a very Jewish way by saying, "Only you know." Then the Lord responds by telling Ezekiel to prophesy over the death in the valley. And then miraculously, the bones come together. They're clothed in tissue and skin. And then the Lord breathes life into them as Ezekiel prophesies to the four winds. And that's exactly what Jesus, the Word of God, came to do, to defeat death forever, to fill our hearts with laughter, and to bring us a peace that will last. It was on this mountain and in this garden, the Garden of Gethsemane, that Jesus had to resolutely set his face towards Jerusalem one last time when he prayed, "Thy will be done." Because in order to bring life to our dry bones, he had to die on the cross in our place, paying the penalty for our sin and saving us from the finality of death. In Ezekiel's valley, after all those dry bones had been clothed in flesh, they still needed the breath of God in order to live. They needed to be resurrected. And that's not only why Jesus had to die in our place, but it's why he also had to rise again, defeating death and giving us hope of life with him forever.
There were also two others, criminals, led with him to be put to death. And when they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." But the other answering rebuked him, saying, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise."
So Jess, the segment we just watched, you were on the Mount of Olives. I remember the first time I saw the Mount of Olives. It was in an early morning. I was on my way back to Canada from Sri Lanka. And we came back by way of Jerusalem. And we got there early in the morning, and the sun was just coming up over the eastern horizon. And I saw the Mount of Olives. My breath was taken away.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was in Jesus' time, the Kidron Valley, which is between the old city and the Mount of Olives, was much steeper than it is now.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
even yet, it is a dramatic sight, no?
Oh, yeah. It's unbelievable. I mean, Jerusalem really is, it's built on a hill on Mount Zion, surrounded by other mountains, right? So there are valleys on every side. And we lived, as you know, in an apartment facing Mount Zion, and it would, it would cut through, and the background was Mount of Olives. So every morning we would see Mount of Olives. One day I remember driving home with Jonah from kindergarten, and he said, "Jesus is coming back right there." He is.
Not bad for a 6-year-old.
Not bad.
Is he a prophet or the son of a prophet?
Yeah, who knows? His name is Jonah.
I remember sometimes when your mom and I were visiting you there, in the early morning, I go out onto your mirpeset, as it's called in Hebrew, your patio or balcony, and right there was the Hinnom Valley.
That's right.
And that's where the refuse of the old city used to be burning all of the time. Gehenna.
All of our imagery for hell comes from that valley.
Comes from that valley. That's right. But I remembered one time looking down, and just over to my left was a cliff face where there was some caves. And one time I came along, and you and your brother Todd were being taught how to rappel by Israeli soldiers.
That's right. That's right.
I'm only in Israel, right? This would happen?
Only in Israel. They make use of every space. Yeah, why not? And
but they also have such openness to children.
That's right. I mean, so they're doing exercises, but we want to learn. So come on, we'll set you up, and there we go. Yeah, it's an amazing place.
The Mount of Olives is a pretty gripping spot. I've been there many times, as have you, and we used to take you there sometimes when you were children. But you walk through all of these. Do you call them graves? What do you call them? And they're monuments, really, to Jewish people who have been buried there. Yeah. Their bones are there.
Yeah.
Are they called ossuaries or?
I mean, they're tombs. Generally, they're tombs. I'm not sure what you'd call it. I think there's graves. The ones that are in the ground are graves. Yeah. But Absalom's, it was a tomb, and then inside the tomb there'd be an ossuary, which is basically a bone box. Right. So once you died and you were laid down in your some kind of linen, and you would decompose, then they'd take your bones and put them in the ossuary. And you'd be in that for another year, and then they would take your bones and the ossuary, and they dump the bones in with a whole pile of bones, and that's what they refer to. They mean when they refer to being gathered to your ancestors. When you go to be with your ancestors, it means your bones are literally going to go be with the bones of your ancestors. So, interesting, eh?
And the biblical end time view is that one day in the general resurrection, there's going to be a lot of life on that mountain.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's why everyone's buried there. Some of the old prophets are there, and they're just waiting for the Messiah to come back.
It really is astonishing, isn't it? I mean, you're walking the Mount of Olives, and just on one part of it is the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah.
And then just up above that is the spot where Jesus ascended into heaven.
Yeah, and also the place where he wept over Jerusalem after having just visited Zacchaeus. Yeah. As you step over that precipice and look over, over the Mount of Olives and down onto to the old city, it's what a sight, eh?
And then on the other side, on the southeastern side, is Bethany.
That's right.
Where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived. One of Jesus' favorite places.
Yeah. Significant place.
It's almost like sensory overload, isn't it, when you're there?
Yes, it is.
And you never get used to it, right?
No, you don't.
I mean, you lived there. You ministered there for a number of years. I lived there, ministered there for a number of years. You were raised there. We call it our hometown. But every time I'm there, and I know it's true for you too, you feel like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah, and it's special. Not just for its memory, it's special for what's happening right now, to remember things that have happened. I remember I was at, it was Maundy Thursday, so the Thursday before Good Friday, and there was this gathering up on Mount of Olives at the Garden of Gethsemane, and it was at a Greek Orthodox church, and we joined this procession of nuns that made their way all the way from Garden of Gethsemane through the old city with holding lanterns with candles and singing hymns, and it was what a memory.
Wow.
Yeah, special.
I remember one time going down from your old church, Christ Church, down through the Kidron Valley to the Garden of Gethsemane on Maundy Thursday, and you almost have to pinch yourself.
That's right.
I mean, this is where it all happened.
Yep.
30 seconds, Jess. What does the future hold for you in terms of Israel videos?
Oh, I'm just going to keep on doing them. I absolutely love it. There's, as you said, there's so much to do. It's. I know the town, I know the country, I know the language, I know the people. That's where I want to be.
Well, we're looking forward to it. IsraelVideoProject.com, Jess Cantelon. You want to log on to that, take a look. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks to you.
Be back with more Right After This, friends.
Jim Cantelon Today is a program dedicated to the teaching of the good news of Jesus Christ. This all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. JCT also brings to you encouraging testimonies and stories from Christian leaders all over the globe. If this program has added value to your life, would you please consider becoming a partner? To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
Now, last time we left you and Jesus and the disciples in the upper room in the Passover Seder, what we now call the Last Supper. I didn't point out, and I will now, verse 30 of Matthew 26. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. You don't often think of Jesus and the disciples singing anything, right? In fact, is there any other place where it's mentioned they were singing? Well, it's mentioned here. This is a Passover Seder. You know, music is very much a part of Jewish worship. You go to synagogue. I used to attend synagogue a lot when I lived in Jerusalem. There's always music. Some of it is quite ethereal in its nature. It's all in Hebrew, of course. I'm really poor in Hebrew, but I can follow along a little bit. My wife and Kathy and my 3 kids are fluent because, you know, the kids grew up there, went to school there. But nevertheless, singing is a part of it. And the more ultra-Orthodox the synagogue, the more music is a factor. And some of the music I have heard in some of the ultra-Orthodox synagogue services is downright uplifting. It's beautiful, to say the least. Often those hymns are a direct quote or a portion of or a reference to what's called in the Psalms the Hallel. The Hallel is found in Psalm 113 to Psalm 118. That's the most sung and the most quoted portions of the Psalm in Jewish worship. But it's quite likely that what Jesus and the disciples were singing is from Psalm 136, which is called the Great Hallel. Now, let me just read some of it to you, okay? Psalm 136. It's like a cadence, okay? You got one voice singing this, and then you got the voices of the rest of them responding to it. So voice, response, voice, response. Voice, give thanks to the Lord for he is good. Response, his love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, his love endures forever. Are you with me? Give thanks to the Lord of lords, his love endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, his love endures forever. Who by his understanding made the heavens, his love endures forever. It goes on like this, Psalm 136. And it could very well be that Jesus was the one singing the lead and the disciples were singing the response. I'm not saying that was the case. The gospel writers don't tell us that was the case. I'm imagining that was the case, okay? So there you go. Chalk that up as Jim's imagination. Dismiss it. Out of hand. Anyhow, they sang this hymn, and then they went out to the Mount of Olives. Now, when you read this, you get the impression that you just kind of, you come down the stairs in the upper room and there's the Mount of Olives. No. You come down the stairs from the upper room, I've done it, and then you got to walk through several little streets, and you got to go out either the Zion Gate, which means you've walked up a bit to the Zion Gate, or you may walk down to what's called the Dung Gate in the Taropurian Valley, out through the gate there, outside of the walls of the old city, and then you walk down a pathway, down, right to the very bottom of the Kidron Valley. At that point, if you want to, you look up and you see the corner of the wall of the city, and that is what's known as the pinnacle of the temple. In Jesus' time, the bottom of the Kidron Valley was much lower than it is today. It's higher today because over the course of centuries, in Israel or Jerusalem being razed by invading armies, a lot of the rubble has gone down into the valley and has raised the level of the valley over the years. But even now, it's still a great drop from the pinnacle of the temple down to the bottom of the Kidron. So you walk down to the Kidron, and in Jesus' time, you would have had to, depending on the season, walk either through or over the water that was pouring down that valley. And then you start walking up, about a third of the way up the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane. That's what's going on here. So it's not an instant transfer from one place to the other. This takes time, and it's important to keep that in mind. So now they're in the Mount of Olives. They're probably in the Garden of Gethsemane, although it's not mentioned specifically for a few minutes. And it's an evening. It's probably a beautiful evening. The wind has started to blow, as it always does around 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Jerusalem. It's amazing. It's like an automatic air conditioning system. You can go through the heat of the day. Boy, how hot it is in the summertime. And then the trees start to move around 5 o'clock. And the cool air is going to come in and cool things down. Anyway, they're sitting there probably sprawled under, an olive tree or two. And he says, all of you, this is verse 31, will be made to stumble because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I've been raised, I will go before you to Galilee. After I have been raised, right over the heads of the disciples. I mean, Jesus had warned them. He had told them, I'm going to be raised from death. But, what's up with that? They had no idea what that meant, okay? Peter answered and said to him, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. Really? Jesus said. You think so? Assuredly, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. Brave words, huh? So said all the disciples. Peter gets a bit of a bad rap in this story because he's the only one that's focused on a little later on, but it's not just the case of Peter denying Jesus, but all the disciples deserted Jesus and fled, as we will see when we get into the Gethsemane narrative. These guys didn't realize how cowardly they would be. Sometimes it's a moment of stress, as they're about to go through, that reveals to us all a moment of stress, what we're really made of. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane. So Gethsemane, as I say, is a part of the, I guess you'd call it the western slope of the Mount of Olives. They would have to walk up from the valley of Kidron to Gethsemane, but Gethsemane does not comprise all of the western slope of Mount of Olives by any stretch. So they probably then shifted a bit over to this place called Gethsemane. And Jesus said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. All right? Pointing over to maybe a little grove of olive trees. And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. And he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. You've heard me say this before on the show. That's the ultimate prayer. The ultimate prayer. Not as I will, but as you will. Not my will, but thine be done. But let's just follow this through a bit. Gethsemane, right here, means oil press, oil field, oil vat. It's a place of oil. It's a place of crushing olives that have been harvested from olive trees and made into olive oil. There are still a lot of olive presses extant in Israel today. They're all over the country. I've seen many of them, but they're all pretty much the same. There is a base stone, and it's usually about 3 to 4 feet in diameter, that is circular, that has been carved out into a circular trough. And then there is a stone that is designed to fit into that trough. The stone has a hole in the middle through which you can put a big piece of wood, and you attach an ox or a donkey or a team of donkeys to that, and they walk around in circles. And as they walk around in circles, this stone inside the trough goes round and round and round. You're throwing the olives into the trough. This heavy stone is going over the olives, crushing them. And there are places where the oil can then flow down into the middle of this big stone into a conduit that is also carved out of stone that takes it to a big pit, also in stone, that collects the olive oil. That's how it works. Olive press. So Gethsemane was oil press, it was oil field, it was oil vat. Jesus leaves his disciples there, and there's more to the story next time.
JCT TV is the official voice of WOW, working for orphans and widows. Jim Cantelon is the founder of WOW and has been ministering to orphans and widows in distress for 18 years. WOW's focus is home-based care for the dying. The horizon is vast, with thousands of the least of these in Africa and India. WOW depends on your generous support. To connect with us, you can call us at 1-800-969-9551, or you can visit us online at wowmission.com.
You know, friends, this program could not come to you without your support. You know that. I'm not a deep-pocketed financier. I'm just a minister of the gospel, and the Lord's called me to broadcast on television. I've been doing it for now over 40 years. This is what I do, and this is what you do. We learn together, and we support one another. I do what I'm good at, you do what you're good at, and guess what? Something good happens. When you support JCT, you're also supporting WOW, our ministry to orphans and widows overseas, mainly in Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and also now in Southern India. When you send your support, ask for one of 4 tranches. This takes you through the entire book of Matthew, where I fill in the blanks in writing that I can't do on television. It is about 160 pages. Happy to send it to you at your request, but remember your very best support for WOW, working for orphans and widows, of which JCT is the official spokesman, and you're the official viewer and supporter. Thank you for that.
Contact us. Jim Cantelon Today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7. If you're sending a check, make it payable to Jim Cantelon Today. Or visit us online at jimcantelontoday.com and click Support.